Hello, and welcome to the Go Mode Podcast Mentor Tournament 2020. We are in week 3 with a nice, well, for me, evening match between Kaesden and Floyd. I'm joined by WGarrison. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and yeah, quite a late evening match, especially for the East Coasters. But this one is going to be absolutely exciting. Between these two runners, I'm going to call it now. I think the one who wins this match might actually take the tournament.
Both of these runners right now, both 2-0. So both doing really well through the first 2 weeks of the Ambrosia Seeds, and could be anybody's game. I think that we're in for a really, really good match. It'll be interesting to see what these two runners have taken away from their mentors.
Yeah, it'll be exciting indeed. This is the third week, no mentor week, and it looks like we are off with Boots in the Light World.
Yeah, for me, I always assume the worst. That could be Pedestal. Anytime you see Boots in the Light World, that could mean Pedestal.
The Light World and Dark World hints, the ones that are prime for the trolliest ambrosia seeds. So, for people who don't know yet, an ambrosia seed begins with a standard open, which is why we're heading into Hyrule Castle now. We have an assured sword, and we get the boots hint, which you saw in the Light World, which can oftentimes help give direction for a good place to go in Ambrosia, but not here. The last interesting quirk with Ambrosia is that all of the bosses in the dungeons for this mode are going to have an item on them and not just a compass or map.
Yeah, and those bosses having items on them can both be helpful and detrimental. In Eastern Palace, you find 2 items, you can go straight to the boss, and then Eastern is done. But for a dungeon like Skull Woods or Desert Palace or Misery Mire that only have 2 items, those are pretty big time commitments if you can't complete the entire dungeon. So maybe put those off a little bit longer than you would normally in an open seed.
So we started off this run with a fetch quest, which really doesn't tell us much of anything other than we might end up at the potion shop quite early. We still have a little bit to go, I think, to actually find out what direction this seed's really going to take us.
Yeah, with that mushroom, that's interesting because you can always check the mushroom and reset the game to save the mushroom for fake powder later. You can route it in maybe with Zora if you find the glove and you have enough money to do so. There's a lot of different kind of things that you have to consider when the mushroom is so early on like this.
Still not a whole lot else being found so far. So I started off with stream with a really bold claim of I think the person who wins this game is going to do very well and quite possibly win this tournament. I want to back that up a little bit. So we have on the left-hand side Kaesden, who has just been playing phenomenal since the beginning of this tournament. He's actually done a little bit of jack of all trades. He's been mentoring, he's been restreaming, he's been playing, uh, he's been a madman. And I saw him earlier today actually do an NMG run, getting a sub 145. That's no joke. That's actually a really strong run.
Yeah, just getting a new PB for himself in his NMG run earlier today. Really impressive. Before the tournament was one of those runners that was right around the 2-hour mark. maybe a little bit over, but with the mentoring and with the practice and time that Kaesden has put in during this tournament, has improved very, very quickly. And his 2-0 record is an example or a result of that.
I know that he spent a lot of time working with Kern. Kern was his mentor for the first week, and he did a lot of the Kern office hours to go through some of his VODs and his play to try to improve getting started in this tournament. And his second week, he was mentored by Shireen. Floyd also did the two different mentor strategy. It's escaping me the two mentors. I think Dr. Bob Tastic was his second week mentor. I'm not remembering the first week, but Floyd has equally been a monster in this game. Looking at his ladder record, he's 6-3 in ladder, and his three losses of them, he had a 2-minute loss to Blaine, who's a giant name in speedrunning, and a 7-minute loss to Weighty Words. Those are two giants in a Link to the Past randomizer, and he came very close to beating them.
As we progress through the escape here, nothing really that exciting other than that mushroom that we found. No bombs either for either of the runners, so potentially if you can't find something on the rats here, I haven't been paying attention to what the rats drop pool is, looking very likely that you're going to have to come back to this later.
Yeah, and one of the scary things that can crop up if you don't get bombs in your first pass through escape is you could have something like gloves in the back of escape, which might force you to redo the whole back half of escape just to get back and pick up those gloves. But most of the time you end up picking up those gloves somewhere and can get the back of escape fairly easily.
Yeah, you will always have that cone of light in this standard opening in that escape sequence. The game will assume that you need it to reach that back room, so we'll give it to you. If the seed is really, really mean to you, it'll put gloves back there and you have to go back and find them. But like you said, Garrison, not very often does that show up, and most of the time the runners will find the gloves, at some point save and quit to Sanctuary, and then just jump right down.
So we saw a really quick map check by Floyd. It was a little bit hard for me to see what was going on there, but it looked like we had pendants in Eastern Palace at Tower of Hera and a crystal in Desert Palace.
Desert Crystal being a very big thing to know because you might need the boots. And the boots hint was a very broad one. They're in the light world somewhere. So if you need the boots for Desert Palace, you don't have a lot to go off of other than you know they're somewhere in the light world.
So it looks like the Lost Woods is helping our runners out quite a bit with their Kakariko routing, with the hideout having 300 rupees, the bush crabs dropping 20s, and there being 3 bombs in the mushroom spot. Our runners are pretty well set to pick up most of the things in Kakariko other than Sick Kid.
And it looked like the tier 1 and tier 2 tree pulls were arrows and hearts. So not the greatest tree pulls. Hearts is okay. Having that much money in Floyd, I don't think knows yet that the bush crabs drop the red 20s. Kaesden does know that. Finding the glove with that mushroom, you could route in Zora really early. You wouldn't get to check Waterfall Ferry, but you could, with all the money you have, go over that direction and try to make a gamble and see if it pays off.
We ended up finding lamp and mirror in the basement of Blind's hut. Lamp meaning we're not going to have to worry about dark rooms for this entire seed now. And mirror not being particularly useful yet, but we'll see that come to play either when we find mountain access and we can get up to Hera, or if we get Dark World access.
can see Kaesden following right behind Floyd. Kaesden did go up and check the Lumberjack Cave. That's pretty much the difference between the two of them now. So Kaesden has the knowledge of the Lumberjack Cave, also knows that the bush crabs are red 20s. Floyd opting to not go that way and go straight to the Lost Woods.
We also now just found fire rod as well in the Kakariko well. So we have multiple ways of producing fire, which, since we already had lamp, fire rod's going to be mostly useful for gaining entry to Skull Woods, or getting into Ice Palace later on down the road.
Yeah, early fire rod is nice to find, but also can take you a couple of different ways. Doing Skull Woods early is a nice treat to have if it is a crystal. At the same time, that gets you access into Ice Palace. You might also, find the Ice Rod, put Turtle Rock in play relatively early, so that fire rod can lead you a couple different directions.
So now we've gone through all of Kakariko, and it's starting to look more like boots aren't going to be such an easy find.
Yeah, boots could be South Shore, Sahasrala's Closet, Zora, a lot of areas, as we do find Quake on race game, and both of the runners will go back for that. You never know if that's going to be a required item or not.
Wait a minute, where is Kaesden going?
He has bombs.
Aha! So again, so far finding a lot of items that will be nice later on down the road, but lamp has been the only thing that's getting us closer to anything resembling Dark World access, and not really the Dark World access you really want. It pushes us a little bit closer to the AGA 1 scenario. We still have a fair bit of Light World to clear before we declare this an AGA seed.
Yeah, Aghanim, not probably on your mind right now. You still have so much to clear. You haven't found any of the items for Dark World yet, but South Shore, Eastern area, you got still plenty of options. So, gonna clear those for sure before you make any sort of idea towards the tower. We still also need a Master Sword or a Cape to even get to the tower, so we'll see if the runners find those.
We got blue mail in the dam. Another nice to have item. Another item that's not getting us any closer to Dark World access. I see chat talking about the sprite that Floyd is using, Will from Illusion of Gaia. It is one of my favorite sprites, and that game gives me such nostalgia.
Yeah, very well done, Sprite. Both of the runners also using the mirror to despawn that block in Dam to speed it up a little bit. So good use of early mirror for both runners to save some time there.
Getting through the mini Moldorms and mini Moldorm Cave, with their erratic movements, they're still not all that friendly to deal with the fighter sword. Anybody who's tried to get through this cave with the fighter sword, oh, and Kaesden knows he's going at it with the fire rod. That's exactly how trolly these Moldorms are in Moldorm Cave.
Honestly, with half magic, you've got plenty of fire rod shots there. So it's a little bit quicker. They die on one hit rather than two. If you're comfortable shooting the fire rod shots at them, definitely worth the shots, because it's quicker than fighter sword. You can do it from the middle row the whole time even. I like the decision there.
I agree. For any new runners that are out there, if you get Fire Rod early, especially with half magic, it is a potent weapon to get you through the early game, especially when you're still carrying around the fighter sword. And a bow in Ice Rod Cave. Now we
So
finally get a
Eastern
bit of
is
a
a
pushy.
pendant. And Eastern is that pendant. So do you go right there? I mean, a bow is a pretty big deal, but could also be waiting for pod. You do have the mirror already. You don't really have a lot of other options, but it does look like both the runners are going to go straight to Eastern after that bow.
Outside of going to Eastern, everything else that's available would be either the turning in the mushroom at the potion shop or a sequence break. I don't see any other option other than to go to Eastern for our runners right now. And then the bow just makes it that much more exciting because you can get the final item off of
Ooh, the
Armbost while you're in
boots.
there.
Kaesden just found the boots. They are on Lake Hylia Island. And now this was kind of where my brain was going. Floyd just found the Master Sword. So you could do Aga or look for the Moon Pearl. You know, it might be in Eastern. Kaesden is going up to the Mushroom area. I kind of like the play that Kaesden is doing because with the bow, if you do find the Moon Pearl and then you go to Sahasrara and get that Master Sword, you can go and splash delete into the water in the Dark World, grab those boots super early, and then you can also do pod and Eastern together. I don't know. We'll have to see where the Moon Pearl is because this could really pay off. And there's the hook shot.
Oh, hook shot in the shop. It'll be interesting to see when Floyd ends up going to the shop. I mean, the Eastern play to me made sense. You had 3 items in the back of Saha's closet, and you have 3 items in Eastern. He might find something that has him put off the shop for a while. And we do have magic powder in Eastern as well.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we're going to find flippers or Moon Pearl here pretty shortly. Maybe gloves, but that hook shot is definitely telling me there's a good chance we're doing Aga because that hook shot gives you access to a very large amount of the Dark World once you defeat Aga 1.
Vortex in chat also bringing up a good point. The back of escape is still not off of our checklist. That might still be required, and we might have to walk back through the front of Hyrule Castle to do it. If the gloves are back there and Dark World access is up on the mountain, that could be really tricky.
Yeah, it is a big time commitment to say, I'm going to go back and do all of Escape just to get those back 3 items. From what we're seeing, Glove still could be in Eastern. We have everything to full clear it. That's becoming a possibility. If the gloves are back there, if the Moon Pearl is back there, that's a pretty big spot to go and check.
So Kaesden is going to join Floyd in Eastern. Again, it's really hard to skip this area, especially with Bow, before you have Dark World access, pendant or not.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of things running through my mind right now. With that hookshot knowledge and the magic powder, we do have the ability to check Magic Bat once we get to the Dark World with the Moon Pearl. That is kind of some interesting item placement there.
And there's Moon Pearl. It is in Eastern. So now we have the really interesting question. How far do you clear the light world before you decide to go to Aga 1? there's definitely players out there that are of the mindset that you clear absolutely everything in the light world until AGA 1 is your only option. And then there's some players that are like, I can get to Dark World faster and make up the time by getting through AGA 1 immediately.
From what these two runners know, if I'm Floyd, I'm going to keep clearing. But if I'm Kaesden with the hookshot and the boots knowledge, as long as Kaesden knows splash deletion, why not just do AGA? Because that's going to guarantee you, once you find this Moon Pearl, a lot of Dark World access and the boots, because you know somewhere the flippers are going to be available. And they're probably going to be available relatively soon. So if you do know splash deletion, you can maybe route in a couple of the light world checks with dark world checks to find those flippers and get a little bit of a lead by grabbing those boots early.
So Floyd just doing a fairly straightforward Armos kill. Not a quick kill, but a fast enough kill. And only getting 20 rupees and the blue pendant.
Chat bringing up that you can't fake flipper to Hylia Island with splash delete. That's right. The way that you would get there is you need the boots and you have to use the Skull Woods pit to do it. So I take back what I was saying earlier. I was just letting my mind run wild.
So it looks like Kaesden actually could be doing one of two things. He could be going up to AGA. He could be re-clearing the back of Escape. Let's see what he ends up doing as he walks into Hyrule Castle.
I like the idea of clearing Escape and then mirroring back to do AGA. We'll see if that's what happens.
Is Floyd going to do a Kern jump to get over to like how? No, he's just going to take the bridge across. The Kern jump is in the Dark World. So Kaesden deciding that he's not going to worry about clearing the back of Escape. He's going to do AGA and see what he comes from that. See if he can find the gloves somewhere in the Dark World to make the 3 items in back of Escape easier to obtain.
And Floyd is coming up on his hookshot as well. So both runners have the hookshot. The only knowledge that Kaesden has is where the boots are, but I'm sure Floyd will see those soon enough. And it does also look like Kaesden did jump out of Eastern before Floyd. Kaesden did not finish the entirety of Eastern. Once Kaesden found that Moon Pearl, made it up immediately in his mind that he was going to go do AGA.
Yeah, that's an interesting call too. That can really bite you if Armos has an item, especially with the seed giving you bow so early. That could indicate that Armos might have something interesting. But maybe he's thinking, I have hookshot, I know where the boots are, I need to get to Dark World. Try to make something more happen with this seed.
Needs to be careful on half a heart here.
I guess the other thing that Kaesden can do, once you enter Dark World from the castle itself by defeating AGA, there's not a whole lot open to you. Pod becomes one of the most likely places that you end up going, just because it's so close to where you are. He might be thinking, get to the Dark World, go to Pod. If I don't find anything in Pod, maybe he can mirror back and finish off Eastern then to find something. It's hard to tell, because with that hookshot, you also have access to hookshot across and get all the way over the west side of the Dark World.
We would need flippers, mitts, or glove, or hammer to get to that hookshot location. I do like the play from Kaesden. It looks like both the runners opting to go straight up to AGA. I don't know. I do kind of like the thought of running back to the back of Eastern or of Escape. If the gloves are back there, that's your access to the whole of the Dark World. So I think that's worth the time commitment. But both the runners deciding just going to go straight to Aga 1. Floyd using the fire rod, like we talked about earlier, as a weapon, while Kaesden opted to use the sword the whole way through.
Yeah, with Mountain being opened up so much, if gloves were in back of Escape, you still wonder if Aga 1 is actually required in this seed. We'll have to find out.
Oh yeah, if there's gloves back there, you have the hook shot too. You can check a lot of checks up on Death Mountain. We still have a few checks too that we're not looked at. We have Agina's Cave, which I think most people will leave to do Aga, but we have Agina's Cave. We have the back of Escape. So there was a couple of places that were still in logic where gloves or hammer could be.
But with we got a map check from Kaesden. We have a green pendant on Skull Woods and crystals everywhere else. I didn't catch where the reds were though.
Ooh, and that's the glove. That is huge.
All right, so our speculation about the Bag of Escape, it's not going to be gloves. They're going to have an easier time getting back there once they decide to head back to the light world. But Kaesden looking like he's making the move towards Pod, which makes sense. It's the biggest set of items that you can reach once you make the trek over to Dark World via Aga 1.
Yeah, hammer is required for pod though, and by beating Aga 1, if you save and quit in the Dark World, you do end up going right back to the pyramids. So if you went over to the Dark Village area and checked out some of those checks first, you could just save and quit right back to pod. And it looks like Floyd is going to split into a different route. So we're going to see two different paths in this seed right here.
Yeah, this is going to be our first major divergence between the two runners. There's been a couple of opportunities for the routes to be very different, but they've kind of stayed in line with each other.
Yeah, and really the biggest thing that could happen here is Hammer is in Palace of Darkness, because then Kaesden is going to have a very significant lead, because you typically aren't going to look in a dungeon where Hammer is required for Hammer first. But other than that, coming back to Pod, though it takes time, is not the end of the world when you just have to kill the boss.
Hammer at Graveyard Ledge. So now Floyd has much easier Dark World access. Given that it's going to be much easier for him to get where he is now, he might even just do Back of Escape mirroring right here.
Yeah, looks like he's going to head over to the Skullwoods, Thieves Town area. I like this play because it does take a little bit longer to get to the Dark World. You can save and quit to Sanctuary anytime. So I agree with this. Going to check bumper ledge here and maybe head over into Skull Woods. That is our green pendant.
One thing about finding that hammer, though, given that Kaesden is in Pod right now, we know that Kaesden's not going to be able to complete this dungeon. The first time Floyd enters Pod, he's going to be able to full clear. That's a pretty big advantage.
Yeah, that's going to be, I don't know the exact time, but that's got to be at least a couple of minutes of an advantage, because though once in the dungeon, it's going to take the same time to walk to the boss and kill him, that extra walk through the maze here by Pod is going to cost Kaesden some time. We do have the benefit of saving and quitting in the Dark World, so you start on the pyramid, and if Kaesden grabs the boots before Floyd to run back here, that could also save Kaesden some time, but it is going to be a time advantage to Floyd.
One of the biggest time saves that you can get with the boots is actually when you're stuck in one of these seats where you have very limited Dark World access, and you have to walk across large sections of the Dark World, like we saw Floyd walking across North Dark World just to get to Village of Outcasts. If Kaesden can get boots and dash across that and dash through Village of Outcasts, that will also be a pretty big time save for him.
Kaesden doing a very nice job with that hammer yump. Does have the big key, so opts to do it this way, which is a little bit faster if you're able to pull off that hammer yump on your first try, which Kaesden was able to do. And so we're seeing two different dungeons. So far, Red Mail and Thieves Town, which will be nice for both runners to see. Chat bringing up the flippers in Pod would be huge for Kaesden, because that would be the boots, and that would be very early for the boots.
Yeah, but with Floyd finding Hammer on Graveyard Ledge, I'm kind of worried about what Kaesden's going to find in Pod. It doesn't look like he really found anything there. He came up empty.
Did Kaesden miscount items for that last room?
He must have. He's coming back in for something. I wasn't paying full attention to everything that he did, but it looks like he must be coming back in here for Harmless Hellway.
I'm pretty sure both of these chests are going to have small keys, because he also didn't do the bombing chest in the front room. Oh, I am wrong.
Oh,
I
it's
am very...
booked. There was actually something hidden in there. And that gives us the ability to enter Desert and maybe clear it depending on if its boots locked or not. I'm going to guess our runners are going to wait until they get flippers before they actually do any of Desert Palace, though. So that was a good move by Kaesden to make sure that he went back in and got the book. That was the only thing, or that's the only thing that he got out of Pod. The only advantage he really has over Floyd at the moment, especially given that Floyd is going to be able to full clear Pod once he finally gets there.
Yeah, Kaesden probably going to be a little upset after checking Graveyard Ledge here and seeing the hammer.
And we had flippers in Thieves Town. So you have to go all the way to Blind Cell in Thieves Town before you could think about obtaining those boots.
Kaesden making an interesting choice here, going up and checking the Zora area without 500 rupees. I guess you can check the Zora area later on with, the flute and stuff like that. But with the mirror, it is so nice to mirror Catfish in with all of these checks. And by not having the money right now, could be rough. I mean, you could always find money on Catfish or in this area, but I don't know about this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one, especially given that you saw boots on the Lake Hylia Island. You would probably be expecting that flippers are sometime early. As you were saying yourself, you thought flippers were going to be early. And being in Thieves Town, that's pretty accessible.
Ooh, we do find the flute.
the flute giving Kaesden the ability to move around the light world pretty quickly, but until he finds the hammer on Graveyard Ledge, that doesn't help him a whole lot with mobility around the dark world, and that's where all of the progression is for him at this point.
Yeah, I'm hoping Kaesden opts to go down and check Graveyard Ledge here. And it looks like going back to the Dark World, that is what's going to happen, because with Kaesden having the flute, when he goes to Thieves Town, he can activate it. So that'll be a walk to the flute location that Floyd will have to do, that Kaesden will not have to do. So both of the runners do have certain advantages over the other. Right now, still way too close to call. We've got way too many items out there and way too many locations to check. But I will say, through 34 minutes, I'm really happy with the execution of both of these runners. I think we're seeing a really good, really well executed match and some really good decision making, even though they're kind of different ideas.
Yeah, I will say, I think I would have had a hard time myself making that gamble to go into AGA 1 before seeing the rest of the items out there. And
I don't think Kaesden knows here. I'm not quite sure what's happening.
oh, does he not know that the hook shot gets him across to Village of Outcasts? This might explain a lot of the decisions that he's been making. Oh,
It
there he
does
goes.
look
He's
like
figured
he remembers
it
now.
out.
I think, like we talked about early on in this, knowing where the boots are can really mess with your routing. And then I think Kaesden actually seeing the boots, just in his mind, he probably had a route of, okay, I'm going to get the boots and I'm going to do this because I know where they are. Unfortunately, can't get those boots without the flippers.
And he's not skipping Graveyard Ledge, so he's going to have his hammer very shortly. And that hammer, combined with the flute, is going to give him a lot of mobility. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Floyd ends up over in the waterfall cave soon, given that he's picked up the flippers in.
Well, but Floyd with the hookshot, flippers, mirror, and hammer is able to beat Swamp Palace. So I would imagine we're going to see that while he's down here with Hype Cave.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah, and chat bringing up a good point. Because Floyd never checked that island, probably will do Swamp before checking the boots location, which means Kaesden might have a bit of an advantage there of getting the boots before Swamp or before a lot of other checks.
Hype Cave with only the bug net. That's a 2 out of 10 Hype Cave.
It does look like Kaesden is also skipping Skull Woods. So neither of the runners biting on that early fire rod to check out Green Pendant Skull Woods. I mean, after finding Hammer, you now have access to Thieves Town and Pod, and when you beat Thieves Town, you're going to find the flippers. So that opens a lot of checks. So I don't blame them for that.
Yeah, so much is open, and they've already cleared most of Eastern. I don't see there being a whole lot of appetite, especially in the Ambrosia, to start hunting for things in Pendant Dungeons right now.
Now, here's the thing, is Floyd... We'll have to see if Floyd checks that Lake Hylia Island, because Floyd will probably want to check Catfish along with the Zora area. So might just run up to Catfish after this. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if Floyd remembers to check that location, remembers the boots are in the light world, and that adds value to that Lake Hylia Island location.
The interesting thing about so many things being open, since the gloves were picked up on Pyramid a long time ago, both of our runners have had a lot of access to the mountain with both hookshot and mirror. Almost everything in the light side of the mountain has been open, and even with all of the item density up there, there is just too many other nice things for them to be doing. Chat pointing out my cat in the background. He's decided to wake up and be a nuisance.
No, just excited about the race going on. Since we have a little bit of a pause here, Floyd is going to check a chest here, and Swamp Palace is a little bit slow going. I'd like to take a moment to thank Adilor for tracking for us and Vortex of Doom for restreaming this match. Without the help of all the volunteers throughout the community here, we wouldn't be able to do these restreams. So thank you very much to our tracker, to our restreamer, and to you as well, Garrison. Thank you for joining me today to watch this late night Ambrosia match.
Yeah, and thank you, SEJay, for joining me with this race. This race, as soon as I saw it, I got super excited, and I knew we had to cast this and get this on stream. So it looks like Floyd's not going to do Diver Down, might not be comfortable with it, especially since it has to be the bomb variant of Diver Down. Just kind of doing the standard grab the key, then open the floodgates to fill the channel with water.
Yeah, the bomb strategy for Diver Down is a lot less forgiving than the Cane of Samaria strategy. You basically have one shot to do it, and each time you fail, you either take damage or you lose a bomb. And you don't have a ton of bombs. You do have 6, but I can understand, just saying, I'm not going to try it. It's going to take me a couple more seconds, but I'm comfortable doing it this way, so that's how I'm going to do it. And with finding the flippers there, Kaesden is going to know where, the boots are. I would imagine Kaesden's going to go pick those up relatively soon. And also with having that book from Palace of Darkness, has Desert Palace access to full clear the dungeon.
We got a tempered sword on left side swamp. Continuing to confirm the joke that there's always a sword in Swamp Palace.
Well, there's never one when I play.
You're just playing the wrong seeds.
Apparently. Vortex and chat bringing up another great point. Both runners do have magic powder from Eastern still. So with the hammer, that's a check. I don't think we saw Floyd check that.
Yeah, I don't believe Floyd checked it. Kaesden might check it because he's going to be going back to Kakariko to activate the flute, most likely. Floyd might be waiting for one of the 4 bottles before he makes the trek back there, because we still don't have a bottle to get the item from Sick Kid.
Yeah, I would imagine we're going to see Kaesden mirror right here and activate his flute.
And Magic Bat also tends to be a good check to do with the entire Smith chain. With Mitts, Hammer, and Mirror, our runners might also just be saying, hey, I'm going to come... Oh, and we have Titan's Mitts in Swamp. Oh, and as I was saying, I was wrong. We didn't have Titan's Mitts for Smith Chain. Now we do. But again, our runners might have been waiting for Mitts to chain in the Magic Bat check with the Smith Chain.
Answering chat, we have not seen the back of Escape yet. The nice thing about Mitts is so far a lot of the items in the seed have been relatively linear. You know, you find stuff in crystal dungeons. It's probably not going to be very long before Kaesden does Swamp Palace because that's a dungeon he does have to complete. So, you know, it's very interesting. At this point, we've got pretty good knowledge on a lot of items. We're still looking for the Cane of Samaria. We're still looking for Ice Rod and a couple of others, but so far, the seed doing a pretty good job of leading both of the runners to those items. And again, finding those Titans mitts could give Floyd other places to go and check. Um, Switching to the mirror here, so we'll have to see what Floyd is planning on doing. Might be mirroring to save and quit, might be doing some other checks.
And it looks like Kaesden is going to do the skip of Magic Bat as well. I kind of agree with this. I really like to loop in Magic Bat with the rest of Smith Chain.
Floyd doing what we know is going to be a really good route of going to Lake Hylia Island, then to Pod.
Floyd can be really happy when he basically blind pulls these boots.
Actually, can also do Ice Palace here, and that might be where Floyd is headed.
Well, he's headed up to Hobo first. We'll see if he decides to tackle Ice Palace first or head up to the Zora River area. We know that Zora would end up paying off because he could get the flute from there to give him full mobility across Hyrule. And Kaesden just essentially following the same route that Floyd has been running. For those who may have joined a little bit later in this stream, the big difference between the positions of these two runners is Kaesden cleared the majority of Pod first without the hammer. Got all of the items out of there and found the book, and has been chasing Floyd around a loop of Dark World ever since. And Floyd does get his flute before going into Ice Palace.
Yeah, also making an interesting play because I would think you'd do Ice first to try to find some money before coming and checking this area because you don't have 500 rupees. So, I mean, it's the right call. It turns out to be where the item is, but a very interesting play by both the runners to go and check the Zora area without the 500 rupee requirement.
With the Icebreaker glitch and not having Samaria yet, I don't blame Floyd for not going into Ice Palace right now. I would prefer to put off Ice Palace as long as I can until Samaria was found and I could do the Icebreaker glitch to do Ice Palace really fast. So Floyd coming back to the light world side of things, using his boots to do the flanctuary checks, do the back of escape, get all of these typically early things cleared out pretty quickly, see if anything's still hiding there. Back of escape had Zora money all along. Floyd could still, since he hasn't done Catfish, if it comes down to it, he can still loop together Catfish and Zora, but with them being two pretty far out of the way checks, I'm not expecting him to go there anytime soon. Yeah, to answer chat, we found Mitt in the waterfall room in Swamp. So Kaesden's going to have Mitt by the time he exits Swamp Palace. And Floyd, who didn't check Lumberjack earlier, is going to blind check Lumberjack for 50 rupees.
Yeah, Floyd having the Titan's Mitts and the mirror here, along with the flute, does make it to where Floyd can do Desert Palace without the book. So that book that Kaesden found in the Palace of Darkness, unless it leads to something on one of the tablets, it's not as useful as it was when we first found it. And the Fire Snake being very difficult for Kaesden to get this diver down off.
Yeah, that is the meanest fire snake I have seen.
But does pull it off first try. Very well done.
Despite all of said objections from the fire snake. And we have Floyd activating his flute, giving him just as much mobility over Hyrule as Kaesden. And given that Kaesden was still basically just doing the Dark World loop all the way around, didn't really get a chance to take advantage of that flute before Floyd did. Floyd going to Meyer, I didn't catch that medallion. It looked like ether to me. And our tracker is thinking it's Bombos. Maybe we might need a little bit of help from chat to help clear. If it was ether, we had the key on the under the doormat.
Oh,
it is Bombos.
Turns out our tracker
we were both wrong.
Knows way more than either of us do.
Yeah, shout out to Adilor having better eyes than me.
And there is Bombos to get into Meyer in Checkerboard Cave.
So, still under the doormat. So, with all three medallions, all of our discussion about what the Meyer medallion was, kind of moot, but usually a very important check, and we have Magic Cape on Desert Ledge, as Floyd is deciding now that this is the right time to complete Desert.
And Kaesden pulling off a very nice diver down again in the back of Swamp Palace. Is going to find his Titan's Mitts here. Very likely route this over into, I believe, Hype Cave and the Boots. I don't think that Kaesden checked Hype Cave before Swamp, which also kind of interesting decision. I know you have to go back into the Dark World, but interesting to choose Swamp before you have the Boots, since you know where they are. Doesn't save a ton of time in Swamp, but it's still nice to have those boots.
Yeah, and especially since he did some of the other flippers checks, and he has hammer and flute. I am pretty surprised too that he didn't take advantage of the boots before going into Swamp Palace. And we got our first bottle in Desert, but with the flute and the mirror and mitts, there's not much of an advantage left for Kaesden getting the book early from Pod.
Yeah, unless that Ice Rod or Cane of Samaria is on Bombo's tablet, which I would assume Kaesden is going to check being right here. Yeah, that book is not nearly as useful as it was before.
Yeah, that's actually really important that he is right near this Bombos tablet, because if, as you said, if one of those big items are here, that would really swing things in favor of Kaesden.
especially the Cane of Samaria. Now, we'll see what it is here in just a second, and if it is Cane, that'll be huge. Unfortunately, just 10 arrows.
Yeah, and chat bringing up the point that I had made earlier. Again, this seed kind of laying. Once we got to Dark World, this seed has kind of laid out the path for the runners. There really hasn't been an opportunity for them to get back to Death Mountain, which has been open ever since we hit the Dark World and found gloves on Pyramid.
Well, and having Mirror and Titan's Mitts and Hookshot, you're going to be able to full clear everything on Death Mountain, as well as find out what that Turtle Rock medallion is. So, very nice to be able to put Death Mountain off, at least until you have Titan's Mitts. So, you have to be feeling good about that.
So we're actually going to get our first check of a very early option in Agonist Cave and see if anything's been hidden in here this whole time. And it's Ice Rod.
I believe that means we're just looking for the Cane of Samaria.
Yeah, only the Cane of Samaria left for go mode. And we are, at least for Floyd, we're not going to have an Ice Rod hunt on our hands. Kaesden, I would be surprised if he ends up missing Ice Rod when he goes to clear. And Kaesden is going to make the Ice Palace play. He's not worried about having Samaria before going into Ice Palace. He's just going to do it the bomb jump method.
Yeah, you have all the things you need except for Cane of Samaria to make this ideal. You have Hookshot, you have Boots, you have the Fire Rod. So, and on top of that, you have Half Magic and Tempered Sword. It's a crystal dungeon. You have to do it. I like this play. You can save and quit after this and still be in the Dark World if you wanted to go over to Palace of Darkness, or you could mirror and go over to the desert area. It's just a really good dungeon, too, to kind of collect your thoughts because it's very linear in the way you have to do it, and just kind of sit there and go, where do I want to route next?
So Floyd finally being the first player to make their move up the mountain in the huge item density that's up here. The only thing that might happen though is if Kaesden ends up finding Samaria and Ice Palace, Kaesden will be able to one, skip the entire mountain and cut out a trip up the mountain when doing Turtle Rock in one go. Although it's very possible Floyd finds Samaria up here in the mountain and is in go mode and can clear Turtle Rock right then and there.
Yeah, and if Floyd does find that, we'll also have a benefit of being in go mode for Palace of Darkness, which Kaesden did full clear except for the boss. Floyd is going to go and check out Tower of Hera.
We'll see how much of Tower of Hera he ends up doing. Tower of Hera could end up being something that you dip in real quick, check the first two items, see if they're actually useful items, and then bail. Yep, that looks exactly like what he's doing. He's not going to clear the whole thing. He just wanted to see real quick if the item was very easily obtainable and bail if it's not. With there only being Samaria left for go mode, it didn't really make sense to me for him to go through and clear the entirety of Tower of Hera to try to find it.
Yeah, I didn't see what the first chest in Ice Palace was. It must have been the map. So we found one item in here. Bombos is required for Turtle Rock as well. So that's the only medallion we actually needed, even though we found all three.
And again, I will say, like, the execution between these racers has been absolutely phenomenal. It is really hard to tell that these two players are actually pretty new players to the game.
Yeah, we didn't mention it, but Kaesden did pull off the Ice Palace bomb jump on the first try with a very short setup, so that was very well done to get to this side of Ice Palace. Now, didn't check the right side, kind of making a gamble here that, you know, if finding the two items, and does find the second item on the left side of Ice Palace, so will not have to go to the right side at all.
Floyd clearing Hookshot Cave as both of these players frantically looking for that missing Samaria. So, looking at what could possibly be the biggest troll in this game still, if Samaria really wanted to be crafty, it could be on Ether Tablet. If Samaria's on Ether Tablet, Kaesden's going to grab that his first time up here. Floyd's going to have to wait until after he's completed Pod to even have access to it. And I don't think he's going to have much of an appetite to come back up here anytime soon. Maybe because he skipped Tower of Hera, it might make it a bit more interesting.
Is Floyd going to check Misery Mire for the cane?
He could be. This is a risky play. So, with it being Ambrosia, there's
Oh, did
only...
Floyd just found the cane? We missed it. It was up on
Oh,
Death
we
Mountain.
missed the key.
Chat correcting me. Floyd did just find the cane up on Death Mountain, so is in go mode.
Oh, that makes sense, because if he found it in Spiral Cave, he came off the mountain a little bit earlier than I was expecting, and if he skipped Paradox Cave because he found it in Spiral Cave, that makes a lot of sense. So now we're just waiting for Kaesden to make his way up to the mountain, which shouldn't be too much longer. Kaesden does have an advantage now that he has Ice Palace and the majority of Pod cleared, but we'll have to wait until he actually gets to the mountain and picks up Samaria to really have an idea of who's in the lead.
Yeah, Floyd will be able to go mode Pod. Kaesden really didn't lose that much time in Ice Palace, though. Checking Ice Tea Room is a little bit of a time loss, but overall, only having to check that left side, not a terrible time commitment into Ice Palace.
Yeah, and Vortex bringing up a good point too. The Pod big key was in the front of Pod. So when Floyd gets there and he go modes it, it's going to be a very fast pod for him. It's almost going to be the same speed as when Kaesden goes back and does it. So, as Kaesden is searching, clearing crystal dungeons, because again, the motto always be clearing. And while we're waiting for him to make his way up the mountain to get Samaria, we can recap a little bit about how we got here. So,
yeah, the biggest thing being the hammer.
So
but both these runners did Aga pretty early.
Yeah, starting from the beginning of this seed, we started off with not a whole lot of items for progress early on. Few enough that the runners actually decided to take the gamble for Aga before even clearing things like Escape and Agina's Cave. Once we got to Dark World, we got our first major divergence. Kaesden going into Pod, while Floyd just went straight north and hookshotting across to go to Village of Outcasts. Unfortunately for Kaesden, Pod was completely empty other than the book, which was not useful. And I believe we're still seeing the majority of the lead that it looks like Floyd has is from that check of Pod. And since Floyd's going to go mode Pod, and again, the key is in the front of Pod, Kaesden's not going to get an advantage with the amount of Pod that he's cleared at this point.
Yeah, at this point, unless Ether Tablet is something like Silver's, you're not really going to have a point where you can catch up until Ganon's Tower and the way you route in GT.
Yeah, and given the way that these two have been executing, I mean, we have Red Mail, Half Magic, Tempered Sword. They're not going to be wanting anything else for the rest of this seed. So with Floyd clearing Meyer, he still has 3 crystals left to do, all go mode dungeons. Again, a very quick pod is an option. Ice Palace, and Floyd's going to get to do Icebreaker where Kaesden was not, and then likely last will be Turtle Rock, which go mode typically does not save a lot of time for, but they will both be doing that as go mode.
And it does look like Kaesden is going to finish up Palace of Darkness before going to the mountain. I do like this play because you have to beat this dungeon anyway, and since Kaesden doesn't know where the Cane of Samaria is yet, if it's on Helmasaur, then you can do Meyer before going up to the mountain and skip the mountain completely. We know it's not there, so Kaesden will do this and then have to head to the mountain area to grab that Cane of Samaria.
And you have to figure that Kaesden's pretty worried about what or the fact that Helmasaur could be holding Samaria, just because of how shortly after doing Pod he found Hammer. Yeah, Adilor bringing up a good point. The mountain, especially since Kaesden hasn't been up there at all, he has all of the items to clear just about everything up there, and the item density is quite high. I would be surprised if after clearing Pod, if it wasn't the first thing he went to do.
Floyd having a little bit of difficulty with Icebreaker, doing it on the 3rd try now. This is a little bit of time that Kaesden can pick back up, but at this point it seems like Floyd does have a lead just based on the fact that Floyd will be able to go mode Pod and Kaesden had to full clear it.
So I'm going to get on my icebreaker soapbox a little bit here. A lot of players, especially some of the older players, get very used to doing icebreaker with a specific setup, with trying to get themselves positioned correctly so they can get themselves stuck on the wall. One of the interesting things about the icebreaker glitch is it's a lot less precise than most of the A Link to the Past glitches of old. So I don't do the icebreaker setup with the kind of pixel lineup. You can actually use like a very quick, like, when you walk into the room, you do a stutter step, and you keep walking at that wall with a downright diagonal until you just get yourself stuck on the wall. It can be very quick if you just kind of brute force it a bit.
Yeah, and Floyd doing something that I personally think is good. Give yourself a number of tries for Icebreaker, and then once you haven't gotten it, especially in a race format, just say, okay, I need to practice it after the race. I'm going to go on and I'm going to do Ice Palace Bomb Jump. Even, for newer runners, if you don't know Ice Palace Bomb Jump, say, okay, I'm going to have to go and just clear the dungeon vanilla. I'll practice Icebreaker later. It's a good thing to kind of keep in mind, is this kind of like limit, so that you don't get yourself too upset or it doesn't get in your head or anything like that.
And Floyd getting Ice Palace Bomb Jump after a couple tries, that trick is also very tricky. It's just between Icebreaker and Ice Palace Bomb Jump, you kind of need to know at least one of them to make Ice Palace a bit more palatable.
Yeah,
Kaesden,
definitely. We do see Kaesden go up to the mountain, yeah.
Yeah, going up to the mountain, going through all of those checks up there, not surprising given what he has left to do. And it's not going to be too long until he does Spiral Cave to get his Samara. The good news for Kaesden now is once he does get Samaria, he only has Meyer and Turtle Rock to finish, and he could potentially do Turtle Rock right here, right now. Yeah, that's a good point, Vortex. We'll see if Kaesden decides to clear Hera. I think he'll use the same line of logic that I was thinking, where being a pendant, you can kind of check the first two items real quick, the same thing that Floyd did, and it's just too hard to make the case to go up there, especially now that we see him hookshotting across the East Death Mountain where all the items are.
Yeah, and there's a route on the mountain that I've seen done where you clear basically everything and do spiral last. So that is where the red cane is, I believe. And that could be bad if that's the route he's going, because you could do the Paradox Climb, go to Turtle Rock, go to the Dark World, check the Dark World checks, then go over and check Tower of Hera and Ether, and then come back and do Spiral Cave last. I've seen that done.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing that you don't get to see necessarily a lot from Death Mountain. A lot of times when you go up to Death Mountain, you only have a specific set of items, and that kind of tells you which way you're going to go. But if both players are going up to Death Mountain for the first time with basically all of the items to do the entire route, Death Mountain kind of has the same properties of navigating Ganon's Tower, where you can have different strategies to kind of tackle the different items that are up there and get an advantage depending on which order you do the checks in.
And Kaesden is going to the Dark World, so is going to check Super Bunny and Spiral, or Super Bunny and Hookshot Cave. We know where the item is. He obviously doesn't. He will find it eventually, but every second that goes by that he doesn't dip into Spiral Cave is time that Floyd is gaining a lead.
And it's not through any mistake of his own. For one, it can be hard to tell that this routing on the mountain is that crucial to the race. And two, just like the GT routing, there's not really a right and wrong way to do it when you don't know where the item is.
And I agree 100%. I don't disagree with any of the decisions that either of the runners have made this seed in terms of the route. It's just the decisions have fallen in Floyd's favor of doing the Dark Village before the pod dip that found the hammer early, and then doing Death Mountain the way that Floyd did, finding Spiral Cave. You know, it's not a wrong decision. It's just sometimes you take a gamble, and sometimes they pay out, and sometimes they don't.
So with Floyd getting the big key already, now he's just kind of running through the front chest, seeing where he can grab that one small key he needs to progress the rest of the way through the back, or through the boss section of Palace of Darkness.
When we are going to see Kaesden check Spiral Cave maybe here, or going over, nope, is going to jump down Spiral Cave.
That's very good news for him. There's still a lot of time that he could have spent up here not checking Spiral Cave.
And this is an interesting route, one that, though this through the seat is the correct one that I don't know if I would do. I think that, you know, if nothing's there, the walk back over to Hera is a bit slow. It does look like Kaesden is going to do Turtle Rock first, and then go over to Meyer and come back.
So now that we have both runners in go mode, we have Floyd with just a little bit left of pod and the entirety of Turtle Rock, and Kaesden also having the entirety of Turtle Rock, and Misery Mire still to go. It's looking a lot like Floyd does have an advantage here in this race.
Yeah, I think this is going to come down to execution, obviously, and then, you know, do they take different routes in Ganon's Tower, and how well do they execute up the GT climb? Because I would say that Floyd has an advantage, but it's not a huge advantage. It's a really close race right now, and one little mistake or one little, you know, accidental one way or the other, you know, gambling on GT wrong could make a huge difference. And so this is a race still that is kind of up in the air, even though Floyd does have a small lead right now.
Yeah, and with both Turtle Rock and GT ahead for both players, like, there's still a lot of room for execution to have its say in this race. I agree with you that even with Floyd having an advantage, it is not insurmountable, and we'll see how the execution of these two players plays out for the rest of this.
Well, and there's a couple of different routing options you can do in Turtle Rock. Depending on where that big key is, you can gamble skipping the big chest entirely and hoping that the lava bridge chest and the big chest don't have a small key, and you'll find one later. That's a route that I've started to become rather fond of. And there's a bunch of different options and decisions you can make, as well as if Kaesden does find maybe some sort of additional help like Butter Sword or Silvers here, can speed up Misery Mire just a little bit.
So if we're trying to get in our runners' heads a little bit here, how do you think the runners are feeling? I guess I'll start with Kaesden, and knowing that he's dipped all of pod and didn't get anything out of it, I'd be worried that he feels that he's pretty far behind. What do you think about Floyd?
I would think Floyd is very comfortable with the routing on this seed. Everything is kind of lined up, you know, going and checking Lake Hylia Island and finding boots just on a whim of, well, when else am I going to check this island? Going up to the mountain and finding Kane. I think that Floyd has got to be feeling really good. And I think Kaesden is probably feeling very well too, because you think about it, your opponent has a pretty good chance of doing the same route that Kaesden did, or making a divergence somewhere else that would give him an advantage. Taking one dip into pod instead of going to Graveyard Ledge first isn't going to be something that weighs on your mind so heavily as if you had done 2 or 3 other things.
Yeah, but you also have to wonder, now, we know that both of these racers did the mountain really late, but you have to wonder if the racers are thinking, what if my opponent did mountain earlier? What if Samaria came up much earlier for my opponent too? How does that play into it?
I could see that being a thought, but at the same time, it's not like the runners went and did a bunch of extra things. It's not like Kaesden went out and checked shovel after finding it or anything like that. You know, when you finished your kind of route, you went up to the mountain, you were still clearing dungeons at the time, so you weren't wasting a bunch of time by checking overworld checks. I think that both the runners might have been concerned a little bit until they found the red cane about maybe Zora or something like that, because that was an interesting call to make without having the 500 rupees. But once everything kind of lays itself out and you're in go mode, at this point, I think both of the runners have to feel super comfortable with how the seed is played out for them.
One of the weird things that came up as we were talking, looks like Kaesden did end up checking the lava chest and not stealing the key. Might have just been he might have been looking for something. It might have just been a mental error. I'm not sure.
Was that the big key, or was the big key here in Chain Chomp
Room? Big key is in Chain Chomp Room. So we should see it coming up on Floyd's side in just a moment, right there.
Yeah, perhaps just some kind of mental error, maybe hoping for silvers or butter. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of right now is silvers or butter sword, because you have red mail, you have tempered.
This is going to mean that Kaesden's going to have to go through at least some of Laser Bridge, where if Floyd only just steals the key, he could skip Laser Bridge entirely. Now, it looks like the key is going to be in the southern half of Laser Bridge, third chest, so I mean, not a huge time loss, but you definitely don't want to check Laser Bridge if you don't have to.
Yeah, that's something we'll have to ask in the post-game interview, is what Kaesden was looking for in that lava chest, or if it was just a muscle memory sort of thing.
Yeah, Vortex bringing up a good point. The last race, or the last seed that Kaesden did was an NMG run, which Big Key is normally in that lava chest. It could very well have just been muscle memory. A very quick part 1 of Trinex from Kaesden.
Very clean.
Yeah, that was a pretty good kill of Trinex there.
So if you position yourself correctly and you spin the Tempered Sword, you'll get 2 spin slashes off on the head of Trinex, which does Butter Sword damage, and then you just have to slash again and that'll finish him off. So that was a very nicely executed Trinex fight. As you see by the end of this, it does look like Floyd will end up being about the whole of Misery Mire in the lead here at the end of this.
Yeah, Kaesden having to flute back down.
Floyd may be forgetting that he has the small key already. Well,
as much of a big deal as we made it out that Kaesden got an advantage for by. Oh no, Floyd's just doing all of Laser Bridge? That's even more curious. We'll have to ask him about this one too.
That almost scared me right there. You have to be careful caping through doors. Luckily, Floyd does know. Turn the cape off right before going through the door, but if you run out of cape magic in a door transition, that can lead to some unhappy times.
I will say I'm actually not familiar with those unhappy times. Can you actually elaborate on that more? That's a mistake that I might
so I
make.
might or might not have been doing a ladder race where I dashed out of the firelock side of Turtle Rock and had the cape active, and then when I transitioned through the door, my cape ran out of magic, and I was stuck walking down forever. And I didn't have the mirror, so I couldn't mirror out of the dungeon. I had to save and quit out of Turtle Rock and do it all over again. It's very unlikely to happen, but if your cape magic runs out at the exact same time as the door transition, you can have some bad times.
So Floyd also having a fairly good part one of Trinex. Not quite as clean as what Kaesden did, but still very, very close. And with the death of Trinex and the 7th crystal picked up, we have a little game we like to play, right, SEJay?
Yes. Get your big key, Ganon Tower big key guesses. It's going to be a short one to it. Until Floyd is in the entrance of Ganon's Tower, between 1 and 22. There are 22 keys in Ganon's Tower. Any one of them can have the big key. Whoever is closest will win bragging rights and a few points on the leaderboard.
So SEJay, what is your guess for the GT big key today?
I'm a big believer in 13.
I'm going to be contrary and not call out a number. I'm going to say Vanilla Compass Chest.
Last couple seconds to get your votes in.
And no key in Hope Room. And it looks like this is going to be a full left side, likely for both of our runners. Although it is possible that when Kaesden gets up here, he could do what's called the Dark Magician strat, where instead of going to Hope Room first, he goes left, and we'll see Floyd come up here into this Stalfos room called the Dark Magician room. You do those 4 checks first, mirror out, and then go right side.
Kaesden pulling off spooky action very nicely. And if you have ever tuned into one of my streams, the Dark Magician strategies are 100% the way to go, 60% of the time. I personally am a huge fan of the Dark Magician strategies. It's the one I always do, but it has bit me a couple times, I'll admit, but I feel like it's paid off more than it's hurt.
I see there's no love for the tile room first strategy. That strategy works 100% of the time, 5% of the time.
Floyd coming up on Rando room.
And Kaesden with his 7th crystal is making his way back up the mountain to get into GT as well. He's a few minutes behind, but we could still get some interesting things that happen in the Gauntlet or in the Ganon fight that could help Kaesden catch up.
And I believe that was 13 chess? If I'm doing my counting right, chat will correct me, I know if I'm wrong, but I believe that was 13.
Yeah, 14 should be Bob's chest, which is the next one coming up. Yeah, Kaesden's gonna need to do Dark Magician strats here to help get back some of this time, assuming that the key is where I called it in the compass room on the right side of G.
And there's the big key in Bob's chest, number 14.
Yeah, that doesn't offer a whole lot of ability for Kaesden to get into this. He's either going to do the same thing and do Hope Room first and go full left and get it in about the same time, or he's going to do Dark Magician strats, which typically goes full right after that, which still will get there at about the same time.
Congratulations to Leoria of Light for guessing 14, scoring 12 points for the GT Big Key game, if I could talk. Thank you everyone for playing, and good luck next time.
GT Big Key guessing game. Say it 5 times fast. I dare you.
I won't be able to. My mouth might actually just fall off. And the seed has gotten to the point where I like to kind of think, if both runners are in GT at the same time, this is a pretty close race, and this has been a very fun match to watch. Obviously, Floyd still has to execute well through the GT climb, does have a lead right now. Kaesden probably going to go full left side, so we'll be finding his big key shortly.
And with this GT climb, there is a fair bit of safety that our runners have. Red Mail and Tempered Sword being well more than enough equipment. Powder giving us multiple chances at health refills as we climb the tower. The lack of bottles isn't going to be a big deal here for these runners.
Floyd having some difficulty in what is one of, in my opinion, the most annoying rooms of the game.
The qualification for one of the most annoying rooms in the game is it has ice on the floor. Getting 2 out of the 3 with Fire Rod strats on Land Molas. And picking up the spare in the second cycle.
And getting a very clean Landmos 2 fight with the 2 cycle there. Gonna head up and go to now the most satisfying rooms in the entire game if you pull them off correctly.
And Kaesden and Floyd still executing very, very well, which is not giving Kaesden much of a window to get back into this.
No, at this point, Floyd does seem to be comfortable. Again, this is not the easiest game to play. There's a reason that there's a mentor tournament going on, and there's a reason that these 2 runners have had a mentor to kind of teach them some of the tips and tricks of the game, because the Ganon fight is not necessarily free, especially only having Temper Sword and no silvers.
Having been a watcher of Link to the Past randomizer for 3 years, and really just starting to play myself with close to the beginning of this mentor tournament. Silver's in the Helmasaur room. We'll see if Kaesden ends up deciding to pick that up. That's a really interesting chest for Floyd to open there. But as I was saying, one of the surprising things that I found out playing this game is that Ganon fight is not nearly as easy as it looks. It is quite difficult, but now much easier for Floyd now that he's found silvers along the way.
Moldorm going into Rage Moldorm, but does do a good job of finishing it off there. Floyd checking all the chests up. I wonder, you find silvers. Maybe you just are feeling lucky and you're hoping to find gold sword too to make the Ganon fight as easy as possible.
Nah, he just needed to pick up the burrito. He was hungry. He needs something to eat for dinner as soon as he gets Ganon cleaned up. For anybody who isn't aware, that map looks enough like a burrito that we'll often refer to it as the burrito. These Aga patterns, while this one's a very easy triple there, but some of those patterns were really not all that friendly.
No, and chat brought this up a little bit. This is definitely the point where, you're starting to get to the end of the seed, and it is getting into the 130s. Your opponent is pretty skilled, so you probably are having maybe a little bit of the jitters. Don't want to let that get to you on this Ganon fight. You want to stay calm, finish out the seed, and, hit the done button when you're done.
Getting a good position to get some tempered spin slashes in on Ganon there in phase 1.
Floyd now on to what is pretty commonly accepted as the most difficult phase of the fight. Phase 2 Ganon probably presents the most challenges to newer players.
And Floyd actually getting hit quite a bit, getting through this fight. One of the things that I'm surprised about is having a blue potion and having cape. Not using cape to get free hits there for phase 2, but now through phase 2, a much easier phase 3.
And you can see how close this race is. Kaesden is right behind, finishing up, getting towards that Moldorm 2 fight and heading right into Aga 2. So very close race between both of our runners.
Missing torch glitch, but with silvers, not that big of a deal. And it does look like Kaesden's going to skip the chest that has silvers in it. It would take a lot. Like, Kaesden is right on Floyd's heels, but it would take a lot for Kaesden actually to be able to get back into this.
Yeah, and with that last hit on GT, or on Ganon, finishing up the game, Floyd going through the doors, getting the Triforce.
And with an Aga required seed being under a 140, that is an impressive time by Floyd.
Floyd
Everybody,
finishing
get your
with
GGs.
An official race time GG's time of 1:37:40. As Garrison was definitely saying, get your GGs in chat. This has been a great match to watch between these two racers.
Absolutely fantastic and great execution all the way through.
It all came down, I think, to that hammer decision.
Yeah, I agree, because I would say Kaesden's only about as far behind as the full clear of Pod. Perhaps even much less than the time it took for him to clear Pod.
Yeah, and Pod is one of those dungeons. I know there is definitely a group out there that does like to put it off for a little bit, because if you can go mode pod, that can save you a significant amount of time. Because pod, though while you're in, doesn't feel like it's that bad, because there are 5 items there and it's a pretty linear dungeon with chests every now and then that feels pretty good. It takes a decent chunk of time to work your way through every single one of those chests, and if you can put it off, and in this seed specifically, if you can go mode it, that was the difference here. It was a really good call and it paid off.
Kaesden actually getting through the AGA 2 fight a full cycle earlier than Floyd.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the final time is here, but I would say that full clearing Palace of Darkness probably took 2 or 3 minutes longer than go moding it, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see what the official times are, but yeah, the combination of the time for that pod play and the bit of time that was saved by finding silvers, I think that'll bring our runners basically the same as far as execution goes. And Kaesden is taking advantage of the cape, which is the one thing I was surprised that Floyd did not do.
I'm a fan of it. The cape doesn't lag the game like Burna does. If you have a blue potion, you're probably going to be fine in Phase 3 and Phase 4. Just get through Phase 2, finish the seed up. You've got the cape, you might as well use it.
Again, for anybody who's newer at running, anytime that you have a cape and you can use it for a boss, it can be a huge help. You'd be amazed for something like Moldworm. You can take out a lot of the trolliness of Moldworm just by popping that cape real quick and getting free swings on his tail.
And we can see Kaesden doing a very nice job of using the Fire Rod and getting 3 hits off per Ganon. That is a very difficult thing to do. You do have to have Ganon line up in the right spot, but knowing how to set that up makes Ganon 2 cycles shorter in this 4th phase, which is kind of where you hear sometimes that Silverless versus Silver Ganon isn't that big of a time difference, is because if you can do Silverless in 4 phases, that's pretty quick and doesn't lose you that much time over Silverless.
And Kaesden is making the triples look far easier than they really are. That is an advanced strat. It is very difficult to pull off.
Yeah, and as the final music plays off, Kaesden enters the back room with an official racetime.gg time of 1:42:03. So GG to Kaesden as well. It's a very close race by both of our runners.
We should be collecting up our runners soon to get an interview. So if everyone wants to stay tuned, we'll talk to the runners and see how they felt about this seed.
And we are joined by Floyd and Kaesden. GG.
GG. Yes. GG.
So I want to start with Floyd. The biggest difference in this run was after defeating Aga, you chose to go up to Graveyard Ledge, while Kaesden went over to Pod. What was your thinking there on avoiding Pod right out of Aga?
Like Hammerless Pod. Hammer's never in there.
And then Kaesden, I do have one for you as well, and then I'll let you guys both talk about the seeds, what you want to chat about. Early on, Floyd did this as well, but you went up to Catfish really early. and you didn't have money for Zora. You did find the flute by doing splash deletion there, but what was your thought for going up to the Zora area without the 500 rupees?
I was kind of hoping I would either find money in one of those things, or I was just willing to accept that I might not be able to get it and just lose the one check. When I started walking up that way, I kind of committed to it already, and then I realized, oh, I'm about 40 rupees short, so just a bit of an oversight.
Before we move on, I do have one question for both runners, actually. One of the interesting things you both did in the beginning of the seed was once getting all of the items required to clear Aga, you both skipped the back of Escape and Agina's cave. Is there any particular fear that you may have had that your opponent might have checked those places and gotten to Dark World a different way?
Yeah, I mean, that was there, but I didn't have a glove at that point, and I didn't want to go all the way back through Escape. It takes so long.
Yeah, I thought about it too. I think by the time I was making the Aga play, there was 3 checks left, because I knew a map was in the back of Escape.
Right.
Three checks left. I needed 2 items to get to Dark World, because it didn't give us any gloves and no hammer, so I think we must have taken the same gamble, same risk, saying, hey, it's an Ambrosia seed. It's got to be Aga, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It's just the chances of the 2 items we need both being in the back of Escape was pretty slim. If it was one away, I probably would have done it.
Yeah, I almost did it because we had the mirror, so it wasn't a save and quit. It was just a mirror to get back to the front. But
True.
Yeah, it was a 50-50. I chose to go with the Aga, and I guess that was the right move.
Yeah. Towards the end, I was kind of worried about the Samaria being in there too, but I had the entire mountain open, so I figured that's the densest check. I should go there instead, rather than checking the one-off stuff.
I played that mountain really late. Like, I feel like I cleared almost everything down below before I went up there.
Yeah, I was all I was looking for was Samaria by the time I went up.
Okay, yeah, that was my go mode as well.
Yeah, both of you were pretty much neck and neck through Castle Tower. The biggest divergence of the seed definitely happened right after that. Floyd, I do want to ask you, after you found silvers up on the GT climb, what else were you looking for in those chests?
I figured a gold sword could be in there. They only take a second to check, and half the swings on Ganon, so I figured, why not? They put silvers up there, so why wouldn't they put gold up there?
I'll ask to follow up. Was that the same reason that you went through and checked all of the laser bridge checks as well?
Yeah, with laser bridge, I was looking for hopefully silvers or gold. Yep, and there was a key on there, so I figured I'm opening at least one of those.
And Kaesden, the check of the big key chest on Lava Bridge, was that just a little bit of NMG muscle memory coming through, or were you looking for something there as well?
It was. I was thinking when I was going over there, just steal the key and go, and then I shot the guy, I got the key, and just muscle memory took me right in the door, and as soon as I opened it, I realized it's like, oh that was stupid. Now I got to full clear the whole place. And
yeah,
it was a waste of time, but it's a mistake. Live and learn.
Yeah, we've all done that one.
Yeah, I've done it more often than I'd like to admit.
Well, I think we here and all of the chat got to see you both had very, very clean execution throughout that seed. A lot of somewhat difficult areas done very smoothly. We saw Ice Palace bomb jumps done very quickly, as well as some other tricks and things like that. So I just want to say good job to both of you for that level of execution, being relatively new to the game. It's very impressive to see.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the bomb jump shouldn't have happened at all. I just couldn't get that icebreaker to work for some reason. Fingers weren't working, so. backup strats now for the bomb jump, right?
Oh,
So you had Kane going into ice pallets.
Yeah. I got the red cane, and that was my go mode. So I dipped out so I could go straight and do Turtle Rock last.
I gotcha. Yeah, so I got my boots, and right after that, I just jumped into ice palace. Just because it was right there. It was full clearable. I knew I was looking for a couple things, so I just figured out.
Yeah, I think I did swamp and desert, and then I went and checked the mountain, got my go mode. So I did what I do: mire, ice, pod, and then TR last, and got to go mode all 4 of those.
Did anything?
Yeah, I think the double dip of pod really.
Yeah, did anything this seed really stand out to either of you as like something weird? It seemed very linear from our point of view up here. Is there anything that stuck out as a weird location to you, or did it feel pretty straightforward?
It was pretty linear. I'd say the order of things that we had to do was a little odd, but it was a very linear seed. There wasn't a whole lot of room to go out of your way and make big choices.
Yeah,
I think the biggest choice was coming out of the pyramid, whether to go into pod or go all the way up.
Yeah, I think in my last race I did the same thing. I Aga won and went around because I didn't want to go into to pod without the hammer. Because the hammer.
I think the reason I went in there is just from the. I thought there had to be something.
Yeah, I figured. My thought is always, if you can swing around, then there's way more checks on that side, and you can always, save and quit, use the Agra portal, and get over to pod pretty quickly. And we knew boots were in Light World somewhere, and not on the mountain. Right. So. Yeah,
I actually found the boots pretty early. When I headed over to do the dip into Eastern, I just checked.
Is there?
So I knew I wasn't going to find them along the way going.
Is there anything that came up during the seed, with this being the mentor tournament and this being the first week where you haven't had a mentor kind of with you on the seed? Is there anywhere in the seed where either A, you wish that you had your mentor this week, or B, you feel like you did something because you've absorbed some of that knowledge from your mentor that you wouldn't have done a couple weeks ago?
I think more the latter. The 2 mentors I had, Flip Heel and Dr. Bobtastic, and a lot of it was just kind of reminding me a lot of it was reminding me the key logic, which I didn't even get to use in pod. But then just little like executional bits, just some tips they gave. I felt like I executed fairly well.
Yeah, I'd say I definitely heard the advice that I got from Shireen and Kern, just like how to route it smoothly, what to avoid if I can, and that kind of stuff. Like going into pod before going up to the mountain, to finish that off, even though it was a double dip. That's something he always told me, is do the thing that can't be improved before the thing that can. And pod at that point was never going to get any better, so I just went in and did it, and then.
Alright, well, I gotta take off, guys. I got a sick kid I gotta go take care of, so. Thanks for commentating, thanks for restreaming, and GG again, man.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, GG, and to everyone in the chat, both of our runners, give them a follow. Go and say hi the next time they're streaming. They, out of the kindness of their hearts, let us restream this race. And again, I'd like to say thank you to Adilor for tracking this race, and Vortex of Doom for restreaming. Garrison, any last thoughts on this one?
This seed has been this race has been an absolute pleasure to commentate, and I want to thank you, SEJay, for joining me in commentating this race. And my final thought for both of our runners, I called that the winner of this seed was going to be the winner of the tournament. Floyd, you can't let me down now.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I'll try not to.
Just to put all of that pressure on you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, for Garrison, for our runners, for Adilor, for Vortex, I am SEJay. Thank you very much for sticking with us through this seed. And it was fun. It was a fun seed to watch. It was a great seed to be a part of. We'll be back with some more mentor tournament races throughout the weekend. Make sure you check out the Discord that has the information on a lot of the races and where you can find it. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Garrison, any last words before we head out?
Good night, everybody.
Good night, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.